This is a long question, but I think this is a popular one, so I'm going to read the whole question. Chris and I have enjoyed learning from you at Service Autopilot Conference. By the way, we have another one coming, as we do. Our annual conference is every year in November, and this will be the first year that we're opening it up to everyone. So even if you're not a Service Autopilot member, you're welcome to attend. Depending on when you watch this video, we host it at the beginning of every November. And also now in a Service Autopilot Academy. So background. We have seen your custom wireframe truck bed for residential service. You might have seen that in a YouTube video from years ago. It's basically a custom beds that we build and we put on the back of Rangers. There's a video out there of that. We've sort of moved away from the Rangers now. We're using F-150s. We still have a lot of Rangers because they're still in our fleet, but we don't build on top of Rangers anymore just because it was hard to find them and they weren't making them anymore and so on and so forth. So we moved to F-150s quite some time ago. But at the end of the day, it's a wireframe bed in a sense that has a little bit of a dovetail in the back and a gate that turns into a ramp. And it's open air, so there's no box on it. We think this is great for productivity, but poor for marketing. Couldn't agree more. We want the billboard advertising that the Tony Bass SLT trucks provide, but they are too big for our residential needs. We want the dovetail, gate, rack system, mower stops, etc. That's all part of this bed that we use. But we want solid side panels for billboard advertising. And possibly a solid panel on the back and underside of the tailgate for billboard advertising on the back when driving. It could be open at top or closed top if it was tall enough for the guys to walk in easily and not lose productivity. So the question, do you have any recommendations or can you point us to sources for a version 2 of your custom bed for residential mowing, but with the billboard advertising capability? All right, so you may or may not know that I've got a pretty awesome team at my company, and so I really haven't been involved in this kind of stuff in at least 6 years now. And they do all this stuff and run it, so I'm sometimes shocked by what I see that they're doing. And we're testing a lot of things, and I just can't give you facts and details on these things, and some of it I probably would be scolded if I talked about it anyhow from our team. But you can kind of look around and see that there are, in our market, I'm sure this is happening in other markets, you can kind of see what some other companies are doing. So a couple ideas. One is we've done some work with boxes on the back of F-150s. There's a lot of reasons why that doesn't really work out so well. Weight, insurance, a number of factors. But I've seen other examples of this out in the marketplace and know other people that have tested it. There might be an idea there for you, but a box sitting on the back of an F-150 that is tall enough that someone would not have to crouch over, I've personally not seen that. When I've experienced boxes on the back of Ford trucks that are tall enough to walk into, they're usually built on the back of like a 350. And that's a much more expensive setup, so I don't get excited about that. But the beauty of the box approach is that you get the marketing, and I couldn't agree more that the marketing is just unbelievably valuable. And so that's one thing to look at, and that's one thing that I've seen. We use a box approach on the back of F-150s for irrigation, for bed and bush trucks, and for some different crews of that type. Sprinter vans, you'll see those popping up. We have some of those as well, but and I didn't realize that until recently, but they're more expensive. I don't know what we paid. I don't know any of the details on these things. I don't know if we're happy. I just know that we've got them in our fleet, but I also know that our team likes to test stuff, and rightly so. And I would encourage you to do the same. My pushback on Sprinter vans would be, what's the ROI on these things versus going with some of the other options out there? And I don't know the answer to that. But that's one I'm seeing more and more, and that's what I'm also hearing about more and more that other people are testing. I've always liked the NPRs, like the small box that's the Isuzu NPR. But again, a more expensive truck. The way I think you approach the NPRs, if you have the cash, you're always looking. They go fast, there's big demand for them. I prefer low mileage. If you don't drive too many miles per year, then gas is perfectly fine. In fact, Isuzu would recommend it. I don't know what it is. Back in the days when I used to have a bunch of carpet cleaning trucks in the cleaning business I was a partner in. Isuzu back then stated that if you drove less than 12,000 miles per year, then the gas-powered truck was the solution, and if it was over 12, you went diesel. I don't know if that data still holds up. That was what it was back then. I like NPRs. So back to my point, I think if you've got the money and the time, you watch the market, and you watch the market in all number of different states, and as soon as you find a deal, you hop on a plane or you do whatever you got to do and you go get that truck. Even if it's going to sit for the next 4 months, you can save enough money by shopping the NPR market that in getting a good deal that it makes sense to just buy it when it becomes available. But if you approach buying a good low mileage NPR under the idea that like when we have a need, we're going to get one at the last minute, you're going to have to either buy a new one or you're going to pay a lot of money for what I would describe as a less than ideal one. And then the last thing I'd leave you with is a competitor of mine in my local market has some F-150s, and I can't remember, I know they have some with like beds on them that have a dovetail coming out of the bed, like almost like a regular truck bed, and then they've cut it a bit and there's a dovetail coming out of the back, or they put an insert into the bed. And then I believe they also have some trucks that are very similar to our trucks in that they're a custom bed and with a kind of a dovetail in the back, again similar to what I'd referred to with the Rangers. But what they did, which was really smart, is they built billboards. And so if you kind of imagine you've got a billboard, okay, and you've got posts coming out at the bottom, and they take these billboards and on your open air wireframe cage truck, as you'd say, and when I'm talking about wireframe, I'm talking about like the mesh that you would see in on a landscape trailer to build up the 4-foot walls. You have some element of that on this truck. So they built these billboards with these posts, and they built so that they can slide right down into the frame of the truck. So for example, if you had a aluminum bed or an iron bed or steel or whatever it is, they would have cut some holes in there so that these bars could go down in there, and basically on each side they could slide in these billboards and drive around town with these billboards, and then you can put a custom sign on the back of the mesh for the fold down ramp that acts as a gate. Hopefully you're following my example. Here's what's so awesome about this. You can take those billboards and you can have several sets. You can have one for Christmas lights. You can have one advertising fertilization weed control at the right time of the year. You can have one advertising mowing. You can have one advertising flowers, what it is. And then you can time your marketing on those billboards to the time of year where the client, the prospect, has the most need for that thing. So the idea is you're running throughout the year advertising mowing, and then in the wintertime, September, October, as you're approaching the time to start thinking about Christmas lights, you change out your billboards. It's very smart and very inexpensive. So yeah, maybe your truck won't be the most beautiful truck out there. You know, for example, a box that's wrapped, that looks really nice and clean. So this isn't quite to that level of cleanliness in terms of lines and angles and design, but it's totally effective, totally gets noticed. And I'd argue that's what matters at the end of the day. So that's the approach that I'd be interested in exploring and seeing if you could pull something like that off.